everybody, Edwin the Magic Engineer again, and I wanted to make a little video about selling magic cards because this is a topic that I've had some people reach out to me and ask some questions about recently, and I think this is something that hopefully I've got some useful information to give. So I wanted to talk about the different ways to sell and the benefits of each of those ways. And, my whole channel is all about, engineers' perspective on stuff, right? So I'm going to talk about it in general, then I'll get a little bit more detail and show some maps and kind of like, a way that I can at least think about it inside my mind. So when you're trying to make a decision to sell your cards, you, the seller, need to know what exactly it is that, you're prioritizing the most. If you want to sell them really quick, or are you willing to be patient and take your time? Do you want to, are you worried about the person you sell them to, like ripping you off? Or do you need a very secure transaction? All of these things are going to factor in, and they really give a different answer on what the best way to sell a specific given item actually is. The general topics I'm going to cover is like eBay sales, online dealers, selling like face-to-face, or like through like social media groups, which is actually a new one that's popped up pretty recently. But one of the overall tips that I'll give you guys is when I sell cards now online, most of the time, if I'm trying to get the most value for a given card, seems like most of the time I sell on my eBay account. And my eBay account is the Ian Dory, like you've seen in a lot of my videos. And I've had it for years, honestly. And that's where I sold my first big collection of magic cards at the end of college. But for a while I didn't know the best way to do shipping, and eBay changed their policies all over the place. But here's one quick tip. These are bubble mailers, and what I'll do is I'll go to like a dollar store, and you'll typically get like 2 of these in a pack for like $1 or something like that. I've never yet found a better way to buy these, at least in small quantities, than just going to like a dollar store. Every time I go to like Office Depot or something, I swear that you find these things, and they might be a little bit higher quality, but they're like, $3 each or something, like ridiculous. So for magic cards, like, many of us are involved in, you don't need like a really high security, high-end bubble mailer or something. I mean, if you just at least put your card in a top loader or something, that works out pretty good. On the topic of top loaders, so all this stuff is all like these are top loaders, and these ones are packages you can put a lot more cards in. And the reason why I'm showing you all these is when I purchase cards, all the cards that I buy get sent to me in this kind of stuff, and I just save them, right? When they come in, I just throw them in a bin. I got a bin over here that's just filled with all these kinds of things. And so when I sell, I've got all those leftover materials from actually receiving cards, which just makes it so easy. Like, I've never in my life bought a top loader, but I've bought a decent amount of cards on eBay and other places, and so I have like a nice little collection of these. So, do yourself a favor. When you buy stuff online, just save them, right? But if you need to actually buy some top loaders, you can buy them fairly cheap in bulk at like a local store. And there's, of course, quite a few differences and such. But anyways, what I'll typically do is I'll just if I sell like an individual card, I'll put the card in a sleeve, and then put that sleeve like upside down inside of a top loader, because then in order to get to the card, it's not just going to fall right out. This has to come all the way out, and then the card has to fall out the other direction, right? So it'll be inside of a sleeve and inside the top loader, and then I'll purchase. Usually for eBay transactions, I'll purchase the mailing like right on the eBay website, because they've actually got a pretty good deal for the cost you'll pay. And you print out a label, then I just tape the label on the front here, and then I print out the packing slip. And what I'll do is I'll fold the packing slip in half and then just tape this right to it. So the packing slip folded over has got a little bit of rigidity. And then when you put that inside here, this overall package has a little bit of rigidity, but the overall thing is less than 4 ounces. And so when you put that into eBay shipping, you'll get like $2.50 is what you'll be able to ship it for. And there's ways to get less if you do an envelope or something, but that's the easiest way I've found. And when people receive those items on eBay, I mean, they know that their card was well protected. It's in a nice looking package, and it's got, you know, all the formal information printed on the front, and then there's a packing slip inside. Seems, you know, very professional when it's done that way, and it doesn't honestly cost very much. For the sleeves, you can get a lot of clear sleeves pretty cheap if you buy them in bulk. And this is a good way to like sell the cards. I wouldn't use like used sleeves or opaque sleeves or something, because it just seems cheap and it's going to make buyers just get a little turned off. And there's no reason, right? When you can get these so cheap, just buy a whole bunch of like clear ones in bulk, and you don't have to play with them. Just get the cheap, real flimsy ones and use that for actually sleeving the cards up inside. But anyways, I think the selling topic is a really big one, because you know, what you sell really gets affected by like the target buyer and the way you're going to sell it, the way you're going to go about it. And I'm a very visual learner. I love to make images. And if you guys have watched my financial videos, you'll see that when I'm trying to wrap my head around something, I'll draw a picture. And I even do that at work for like engineering stuff. Like when I'm trying to understand something, oftentimes, like, I'll just have this notebook and I'll be drawing pictures, and then I'll show the pictures to people and then other guys I'm working with, and then they'll give me feedback on it. Does that make sense? Does it not make sense? And oftentimes what happens is when you draw an image, everyone, you know, that you're working with, when they all kind of see the idea, everybody kind of gets on the same page about how it works, and oftentimes it even exposes the fact that people actually have differences in how they see it. So I'm going to do that for you guys right now. I'm going to draw an image of the craziness that goes on in my head when I'm trying to figure out how I want to sell a card. So let's do that right now. Okay, here we go. So this is what I term in my head the seller grids. And the reason why I did 4 of these, and I'll label them in a second, is because like each of the things you can sell your cards into kind of ebbs and flows based on its own reasons. And I tried to figure out how to like lay these all together in like one chart, but they really don't work like that, right? Because each of them has their own independent variables that move things around. But then if you try to put them all in one, it starts to lose its meaning, and I think you'll see why. But let me explain kind of what I've got here. So ignore these 3, let's focus on this one. What I've got here with this grid is kind of like a chart where on this, which is normally the x-axis, you've got seller trust, and so this is seller trust minus, this is seller trust plus. So as you're moving this way, that's when a seller trusts you more and more, right? And this is the process minus and process plus. So if you're moving up this way, then it's like the process, you know, gets better and better effectively, right? So if you want to get the best price you possibly can, where you're going to want to be in that corner, because that meant the process was really efficient and then the seller was very trusted. Where you don't want to be is down here, right? You don't want to be in a spot where the process is pretty bad and the seller is pretty bad, and so you're going to get the worst money for your actual cards. You're not going to get much value like this. So that's where you want to be. This is where you don't want to be. So it's anything you can to get that way. Now let's also realize though that, you know, there's times where you know, these 2 values, more like that actually, might actually end up being equal, right? Because, you know, the process was great, it was fantastic, but, you know, the seller wasn't very trusted very much at all, right? And so I put these on separate axes because there really are like 2 different topics, right? And when I start going into the individual details, I think you'll see that. But for a given topic, you might have individual transactions that end up all over the place. So let's say that this one here, let's call this eBay. This is selling your cards on eBay, right? And for one card that you sell, let's say that somebody really trusts you because they know you in person and they found you on eBay. So that worked out really well, right? But then you just kind of ran into something and you couldn't quite hit the best price you thought, right? Someone else, they don't really know you, your account's kind of new, so maybe that transaction's down here somewhere, right? You kind of end up realizing that, you know, you can never quite get like all the way up, right? And also, if you start adding complications, maybe you end up down here because, you put your own terrible steps, like you pay too much for shipping or something like that. The reason why this is important is because each of these different categories has its own inherent disadvantages, right? So eBay, for instance, there's like 3 main things that are going to really hit you. And so let me just draw a little box here, up here at the top, and I'm going to call this one eBay fees. When you actually buy or sell something, eBay is going to take a cut of it, right? That's why they're in business, right? But what that means is since everything you buy or sell on eBay is going to have that fee, you're never going to get quite up to the most efficient process because you're always going to run into like some eBay fee. And it's a percent, right? Which is an important thing to know also. Then there's also, if you're doing the transaction over PayPal, which I think almost everybody does in eBay, right? You've actually got a smaller amount here, which is the PayPal fees. I'm trying to write that lettering bigger. So you got PayPal fees, and that's also a percent, right? And then there's one more that you're also going to have, and that's going to be the shipping costs. Shipping cost. Now for us Magic Card guys, I mean, most of the time, like unless it's a big card and you're buying a lot of insurance, which isn't very often, the shipping cost is like $2 to $7, well, $2.50 to $7, something like that. But the point is, it's not a percent, right? If you sell a $500 card, it's not necessarily going to be like 10% of that. You're going to have a shipping cost and a little bit of adder for it. So for the most part, this one is not a percent. We'll just give it an easy number to make it simple. Call it $5 or something, right? Because it's not 3, it's not 8, it's kind of somewhere in between. We'll just average it out, right? Point is, those 3 things add up, and then you're never going to hit process better than that, right? So all of your working space you're never going to be there. You're going to be somewhere in here when you're actually doing transactions in terms of how good your sale is going to be, right? Now, there's another one actually that comes this way, because remember, this axis is seller trust. So let's just get all these out of here because they're just confusing and it's driving me crazy. So let's draw another box here that goes down this way, and let's say this one adjusts, right? It's going to move back and forth like this. Well, what is that? Well, this is seller trust, and so this is more trusted, this is less trusted. So this is basically your eBay account, right? If you have an eBay account that's got 2 feedback, well, it's going to give you very much money, right? You got to build up an eBay account, and you got to like get a reputation. And I've actually had times where people cheated me, and I had to just let it go and just lose money because I needed to keep my eBay account at like really good feedback. And right now it's 100%. Like I've never had an issue on eBay that I wasn't able to resolve. But that cost me money at times, right? So anyways, this is your eBay feedback. I'm gonna do that capitals. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so what that basically means now is this is the space you're playing in for eBay, right? So hopefully everyone's following. So let's fill in some of these other possible categories. Let's call this one face-to-face. Maybe we'll call this one social media group. I like the way I did that C. There we go. Media group. And we'll call this one online dealer. So let's go through some things that are going to restrict these other categories. So like take online dealer for instance. Now, if you've dealt with a dealer, and this could apply to like local dealers to some degree also, but I'm just going to keep this fairly simple. When you sell to a dealer, if it's a small card, like a new set card, like a $5 card or a $2 card, a lot of times they're just going to charge like 50%. So as in like if it's a $5 card, they're only going to give you $2.50 because if they're going to sell it for $5, then they want that big markup if they take that risk, right? So online dealers, I mean, if we're going to draw a line here right across the middle, somewhere in here is where it moves between, and actually I'll just draw this bottom one like this. So this up here is the 25%, and this is the 50%. When you do like sell to like an online dealer, like a Star City Games or something like that, normally you're in this range, right? I mean, you're never going to hit what you hit with eBay. The margins are much worse, right? But one thing that's nice though is that with eBay, you got to spend all this time creating the auction and putting it up online, and you got to wait for people to buy it, and then you got to ship it. It's all this effort, right? Online dealers oftentimes will just have their buy list, and they say, here's what we'll buy, and you can just pack up a bunch of cards and send it to them, and they'll say yes, no, send you back the things that they don't, and then buy the things that they do. And so it's just much more simple, especially with big collections. It can be much simpler to just deal with an online dealer. But you're going to lose a lot of that money. And in terms of how trusted they are, well, most of these online dealers are very trusted. I mean, you've got, Vintage Magic and, Power 9 like Dan Bach, and you've got Star City Games and Card Castle and all these like major known stores. They're very trusted, right? So you don't have to worry about that one at all. So really what you're really dealing with is there's a little bit of shipping in here, right? If you're going to sell to an online dealer. But it's it's a fraction normally of whatever that cost is. The bigger thing is that margin that the dealer is going to eat. Over here in the social media group, well, there isn't like a dealer transaction. There's a shipping cost, right? So let's draw that in. The shipping cost is similar to all these others. It's not a huge shipping cost. But on a social media group, suddenly the trustability of the seller on this axis starts to become a big thing, right? Because, I mean, just imagine how stupid you'd feel if you're like, sorry, Dad, I sold my $100 card to some guy, and I sent it to him and he never actually paid me. And then your dad's like, well, where was this guy? Where did you meet him? Like, oh, he was on this Facebook group. Now you feel like a real idiot, right? And Facebook's not gonna cover you on a bad transaction like eBay and online dealers will. You got no guarantees there, and so you really got to know people. And since there's that inherent risk, people are gonna discount cards because they don't know, they can't verify that all this stuff is gonna work. So I can't tell you what that percent's gonna be. I know some people that almost hit full price, and I know some people that are like 70% of market value. So, I mean, let's just kind of tentatively say this. Maybe here's a 70% line, and this one's somewhere around 10%. And generally, you kind of move inside of this range, right? And so, here's the quadrant that you're basically dealing with in a social media group. And also, on this note, this one didn't exist for a really long time. I'm a member of several social media groups that trade magic cards. One of them is called High-End Magic, and it's a Facebook group that I actually got invited to. And I've bought several cards off of the High-End Magic group. I've never yet sold into that group, but they exist. And people will ask for recommendations, and they'll say, does anybody know, Joey Thompson? And then people will be like, oh, I did a deal with him, I didn't do a deal with him, and they'll give feedback. And it's kind of goes slow, and you have to have a little bit more faith, especially for the big cards, but it's there, right? And it is possible to go into a social media group, and if you're well known and they're well known, then this line can slide way over, and you can get a transaction that's right up here that's pretty darn good, right? So that's definitely one to kind of keep your eye on, because it is possible, right? And then face-to-face, well, there is no shipping costs, right? There's no dealer transaction, so this one's all the way to the top. And in terms of how much you trust the seller, well, there is a line here, and I'm going to say it goes all the way to there, and then it's got some amount down here. Who exactly knows where that other line is? But it will move back and forth between these. And what causes that? Well, this is you, the seller, not being trusted, or maybe even them not being able to validate. And so what moves this on this axis for the trusted seller, it's how good you are. It's how capable you are of looking up prices, verifying that cards are real, being able to validate their condition. The more skilled you are, the closer you can get this one to this side, right? So it is possible to have one that is literally just boop, right there in the corner. I mean, you hit full value, right? So looking at these, you would think, well, face-to-face is what you're going to want to do every time, right? But you don't always. Well, why not? Well, because that's what I drew this up here for, because Rudy and Daniel Chang and others like to talk about liquidity inside of a market. And that is directly borrowed from Financial Worlds. Liquidity really literally means whatever this thing is you're talking about, how easily can it just turn into cash? how easy can it just become liquid? That's the analogy, right? So not all these things are as easy to sell your stuff into these markets, and right. So if you were going to say, what is the most liquid of these and what is the least liquid, I'm going to say this face-to-face one. In fact, I'll use blue to keep this consistent. I'm going to say face-to-face is all the way down here, right? And the reason is because you're dealing with normally like the person you're talking to, right? And so if you go to like eBay, like anyone on eBay might be willing to buy that card. If you're talking to someone, then they're not going to want every card you have to sell. What you've got is, what do they call that in financial world? The situation of wants or something. You don't have the good that each of you wants, so it's not very liquid, right? Going face to face, just hopefully people are going to want what you actually have. So it's all the way down at the bottom of the liquidity scale. And eBay, I mean, millions of people look at eBay every single day. So eBay is definitely going to be the top of the liquidity scale for sure, right? Absolutely. If you deal with an online dealer, then online dealers, for the most part, I mean, they've probably got people in their local area that'll give them like a lot of like general cards. If you're going to give them like bulk, they're just not going to give very much money for it. And what they're mostly interested in is like the more expensive cards that for them are very liquid. They can get them and they can sell them very quickly, right? So that's like the most highly desired cards are what an online dealer is probably going to want to go for. So me personally, I'm going to put the online dealer here. And probably somewhere close to them, I'm going to say the social media, right? But notice I put the social media above the online dealer. Well, the reason I did that is the social media groups, they are still getting started, but there's a pretty large amount of people that are actually in those groups. And an online dealer has to look at cards that are just liquid. They don't want to hold it for very long, right? An online dealer, they're not collecting magic cards. They want to get a card, get it out. But in social media, you're talking to people that actually want those cards and they want to like keep those cards. Most of the time, people don't want to get rid of them. There aren't a lot of people on social media groups that are just trying to like make money. Most of them are actual players, right? And so if they're actual players, their appetite for cards is much larger, right? They might actually want some of those commons and less expensive cards, and it's a growing thing with a lot of people out there. So I found it more easy to sell like a bunch of general cards to social media than online dealers. I mean, anything that'll go to an online dealer, you can sell on social media for sure, right? Oh, here's a dual land, here's a Mox, here's a Mishra's Workshop. Yeah, anything that'll go here will go here, but not everything that goes here, right? And so the liquidity is a big thing. Now, when you come back to here, now you know why you want to sell here because you can get the best price. But eBay, even though you got these things pushing it in, and now you're working in this quadrant, and you're not going to get the best price for the things you sell. Well, but the other thing is that eBay is so liquid. I mean, I can put cards out there that are worth $1 each that, like, there's millions of them are printed. Somebody somewhere in the world is going to want it, right? It's the most liquid out of all of them. That's why each of these things actually exist. So now hopefully that's all making sense. Let's say I wanted to sell a Mox Jet, right? Pretty big card, right? If I needed it quickly, I just needed to sell it, just bam, right? Just like right out the door. I need the money, like, PayPal to me or something very quickly. Well, an online dealer is probably going to be faster than like anyone else. Unless I get lucky and meet someone face-to-face or a social group, an online dealer is probably going to get me, or especially if it's a bunch of cards, that money really fast, but I'll pay a big premium. If I put it on eBay, I'll get more money, and I'm pretty sure it'll sell, but it'll beat the online dealer, but it'll take more effort and take a little bit more time, right? The social media group, if you've established your reputation, it'd be a great way to actually sell it. But what's actually going to happen? Let's say it was a Beckett 10 Lotus. It was a $100,000 card. It was really expensive, right? Well, think about that for a second. If it's a $100,000 card and you sell it to an online dealer, 50% cut, that's $50,000. So is your effort to sell this one card worth 50 grand? Yeah, it's worth it. So you're not going to sell like, a really high-end one here, like unless you're desperate for money, and don't do that, right? You might sell it on eBay, because like the benefit of eBay is like there's millions of people looking at it, right? You might have that $100,000 Lotus, but nobody you know face to face is going to want it. And the social media group, even though that's a lot more people, nobody's got the cash for it in that group. So you got to put it on eBay because eBay sees so many people, but it'll give you that exposure, but then they're going to take that big cut. And so what people will do sometimes, and I'm not recommending this, I'm not advocating this, I'm just saying it happens, right? People will put things on eBay at ridiculous prices, make contact, and then they'll go outside of eBay, and they'll actually even fly to that person and see them face to face and do the transaction. Or maybe do it just like over social media group kind of thing, but they attach themselves to the actual customer via eBay, right? Those kind of things, they do actually happen. And so eBay has a right to be mad about that, by the way, because you use their services. And then if you put things on eBay, you're agreeing to sell it. And if eBay connects you with someone, I think legally speaking, you're not supposed to do that. But it happens, is all I'm saying, that people actually do that. Anyways, I hope that was helpful. I hope that gave you guys some background on what I personally do for selling. My eBay account is Ian Dory. If you guys want to find me on eBay when I'm selling cards, and you'll probably get them in the package. And now hopefully you've seen here's what's good and bad. And one more other note, one of the friends that was asking me about some of this stuff for selling cards, he actually has 2 Black Lotuses, he has a Mox, and he's got a bunch of 4 and black border dual lands, an Arabian Nights set, maybe some other stuff. And we're still in negotiation, but I might be selling him that stuff for him, right? He might send it all to me and have me sell it, and then I'll probably sell it on eBay and add the Edwin cut here to make it actually worth my time of doing it. But instead of just like doing it, like I was having this conversation with him over the phone, and I was walking him through all this, and so I was sitting there thinking like, yeah, this would make a great video on the channel. I'll just do this here, right? So yeah, hope this was helpful for you guys, and thank you everybody for subscribing, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.